Liberty Phoenix, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey guys, I've been having a lot of issues with preaching the good word, if you will, to my friends and family. Apparently, I
The
come
good
off
word
as
about freedom, you mean?
yeah, yeah. Apparently, I come off as condescending, or at least this is what I've been told. And that like it sounds that I put myself on a pedestal, and they interpret me as being as thinking that I'm better than them. And I was wondering if you guys have any tactics that you can use to avoid transmitting the message that way. Because
Who
I've
are you
had
getting this feedback from?
my friends and family and coworkers.
Okay, so what's probably happening here? Oh, first off, I've got to say that in your defense, people that say that you sound condescending generally don't have anything to say about the argument that you've just put forward, right? Like they're bad at this debate thing. They have nothing to say. So what they've got to say is, you've said what you've said wrong, right? Like, so that but what you need to consider is that you're trying to change hearts and minds. You're not trying to be right. So it's important to consider that. I will defend people, however, when it comes to this condescending thing, because I think it's a poor rebuttal.
And it could also be a thing of they could be asking you the questions in a way that sort of invokes a condescending style answer. Such as,
that's the issue,
what do you mean?
They don't ask about it.
What do you mean roads could be built without government? Huh?
Well, it sounds to me like, are you saying that we need the government to put concrete on the ground? I mean, that sounds condescending, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because we don't need the government to put concrete on the ground. I mean, like you've asked me a dumb question. I have pointed out that it was a dumb question. And then we go, we move further. So, yeah, I mean... So that's my defense, and certainly we've been called on condescending a million times here on Free Talk Live.
Is that just something that naturally comes with being aware that you own yourself and that all these other people are acquiescing to the state? I mean, is that just something that's naturally going to occur? The condescension?
I don't think that condescension has to, and I'm going to give you some techniques. So first off, ask more questions, give fewer statements. If you ask questions, yes, you will often get people riled up. There's no doubt about it. But you can't really be considered condescending if you're asking questions, especially if you can keep your tone light. Instead of, really? Do you think that it's impossible for the government to, or for some other organization besides the government to put concrete on the ground? Like that's a condescending tone. I used to think that too. But then I thought about it, and it's not like the government's the only agency in the world that could possibly put concrete on the ground.
And in most cases, they're not the ones putting the concrete on the ground.
Right.
They're hiring the contractors with your money.
Right. So there's actually people who aren't the government, and there might even be some evidence that the government is bad at putting concrete on the ground, and that we don't really need them to do that. Now, what you might... and then you go a little bit deeper, because usually if people are talking about roads, what they're actually talking about is eminent domain. They don't think that only the government can handle roads. They think that you need the government to steal land from people in order to make straight roads. And this goes into auction theory, right? So if you look into the ways that it's possible to make roads, look, because all you need is two paths from point A to point B, and then you put those people against each other in a bidding situation, and one of those people in that path is going to say yes, and the other ones are going to say, and underbid the others.
And one of the things that I find interesting is if you go back and look at the railroad systems from the mid to late 1800s, the railroads, or the train tracks that were built by private companies
on private land,
were actually straighter than the train tracks that were built by governments.
Because the governments wanted to give their friends and cronies payoffs.
Yes.
Oh, we'll buy your land, and we'll pay a little too much for it. We'll just take the train way over here and do that.
I think that I think we've gone off away from the original question, which was about condescension, into a discussion about roads and trains. But
Ian's going to talk about condescension.
Yeah,
Did you hear my tone?
Anyway, this is a common accusation. I've been accused of this as well, and I think that one of the reasons why people in the liberty movement are accused of this is because it can be difficult to communicate to someone else these ideas and not come from this perspective of, oh, I'm so enlightened, that you've discovered this thing that other people haven't discovered, though they normally live their lives by it. But they don't realize it. Let's go back to Liberty Phoenix. He's been accused of being condescending by friends, family, and coworkers. And it's certainly possible that
they're probably right,
No, that's not what I'm saying. I think that it's possible that, perhaps people are interpreting the things you're saying as condescending, even though you don't necessarily intend to sound that way. I know that when I've been accused of being condescending, I've never thought of myself as above anyone else, and that's the definition of condescending. You're descending from your level to talk to the little people or whatever.
I, on the other hand, am certain that I'm above everyone else.
Well, I'm not like you, but I
agree.
I do believe that I'm on the same level as everybody else, and when I'm communicating, I just want to communicate ideas, but I can understand why somebody would say, oh, well, you're just being condescending, because it's hard to express. And Mark, you did this earlier. You used the salesman pitch of I feel, felt, found, I think. Or wait, is that what it is? Feel, felt, found? No, it's just like salesman thing where you say, once upon a time, I felt like you did. I felt like this, and then I found that, and now I feel that. Found,
felt,
feel.
Found, feel.
Yeah, that's it. Now I feel this. So you kind of explain your process, and the idea in sales is that that's supposed to...
Felt, found method.
Felt, found method.
Felt, found technique.
I always heard it feel, felt, found, but either way.
That's actually, it's a feel, felt, found is the strategy.
Yeah.
So is that the technique that I should use?
No, I don't know. I think you have to be cautious with it, because while on one hand you're saying it to try to identify with the person. Oh, yeah, I used to feel that way. And then I found this information, and so now I feel this. I found this. And the idea is you're supposed to connect with somebody with that, but I don't think it comes off as in that way all the time, especially with these ideas, because it can sound like, oh, well, you used to be at my level, and now you're all the way up there. And that wasn't the intention.
Tone is very important here, but oftentimes you're dealing with people who haven't spent that much time thinking about these things. Condescension is it's sort of a natural thing. Like, you've spent some time thinking about this. You have come to a conclusion that is higher and better than the conclusion you had before, which is, of course, the conclusion that they share. So, yeah, to some extent you are better than they are in the sense that you have found more. So
well,
it's
that's only
about
from your perspective. They may feel that you're not better than they are, and they may, while you may disagree with them,
then they should be able to come up with really great arguments, right?
Well, let me ask this question. Liberty Phoenix, the people that say that you are condescending when you are discussing the ideas of liberty, are these people that you often butt heads with when you're having other conversations?
Well, I don't really have other conversations. That's pretty much all I talk to these people about. If I'm not talking to them about liberty or about something that's happened because of police brutality or something like that, I really don't talk to anyone anymore. They don't have anything to contribute. Everything seems like a waste of time.
They're probably tired of hearing about it, honestly. Some people just aren't good prospects.
Right, and the reason that I asked the question is when you first called, I was thinking it could just be as simple as like personality clashes or people that you don't really get along with anyway, that they really don't want to be talking to you about anything, so they'll just find an excuse to not listen.
Well, I like what Mark has to say is that they don't have anything they can say, right? Because your ideas are very good, and they're threatening to a lot of people's sort of status quo of where they're at. And so rather than really address the ideas or try to come up with some sort of rebuttal or admit that they're wrong or that, you might be onto something there, Liberty Phoenix, it's, oh, well, you're just condescending. And so it's a way to brush off the whole conversation and make you look like the bad guy.
So tone, ask questions as opposed to giving statements.
I like that. Asking questions.
Do the feel, felt, found method. I think it's good, and
I think generally it's good, but you have to be careful with it.
And here's one thing that I think that really worked for me with my wife. Okay, because I had this going on.
Before you get into that, with the feel, felt, found, it's one thing when you use feel, felt, found and you're trying to sell a product, because buying a bar of soap nobody's going to see that as like you've had some sort of mental
epiphany,
right? So that's
I
not
felt
the same
dirty.
thing.
I found
Right.
soap. Now
Now
I feel
I'm
clean.
Irish Spring
You
clean.
should buy soap too.
Yeah. So that's not the same. And I think that when you come at it from this discussion, it can be tricky. But go ahead with the Laura example.
So I had this problem with my wife early on. You know, I mean, people don't. I didn't date her because she was a libertarian. I started dating her because, you know, we really clicked. And so one thing that I was obviously at the time I was doing a radio program, and I needed to come up with solutions based on a free market principle to different problems. But consider that everybody listening to me can claim to be starting a blog or, you know, thinking about doing a podcast or whatever. And so therefore they are trying to figure out, you know, things from a liberty angle on a particular issue. And then you could ask the person themselves to solve the problem. You know, one thing that I've been having some trouble with is trying to imagine how, you know, security or policing might go on in a free market. And specifically things like burglaries or murder or rape or whatever the terminology is you use. And some of these are some of the tough points I've had in it. Can you think of any ways that I might explain this? Like what the world might be like in the absence of a monopolistic state, but instead sort of a free market thing, and then have them solve the problem.
If they can come to the conclusion on their own, that's obviously the ideal, and that's what you were talking about earlier with asking questions.
Well, but this one really does set them right in the center of it, because at this point, they don't either. You know whether or not they want to have a conversation with you at the end of this. It's like, I hate talking to you about this stuff, and now you've put me in the middle of this. Like, then you're going to get a very bad reaction. It's going to be like, I don't want to think about this. I don't care about your blog. What's important to you doesn't matter to me.
Well, yeah, that's kind of like the point of the crux of it all. I mean, how do you present these ideas to people where you will spark that interest of wanting to finally be free? Because the people that I'm around, they don't care. They are complacent.
Not
and
everyone's a
with
good prospect. I mean, this is a sales game.
Why do you think we moved to New Hampshire, Liberty Phoenix? It's because I mean, you know, this is what everybody deals with in their lives.
And some people aren't really going to notice the, you know, encroaching big government until big government smacks them in the face with a 2x4.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, you just got to put somebody down as a bad prospect, or they're not ready for it now. You know, and 6 months later, they may have had that smacking of the 2x4, and then they'll come to you and they'll say something like, you know what, such and such happened, and I started thinking about it, and you were right. More coming up. This is Free Talk Live. So a little bit more, I think, on the idea of condescension and talking with people about the ideas of freedom. I mean, you've got a situation where Liberty Phoenix, he's in Illinois, probably one of the least freedom-oriented places in the United States. He's surrounded by people who...
Don't you sound condescending?
That's just an assessment based on the amount of government they have there.
I don't care about your facts. It sounds condescending.
Okay. Well, I can't help it how people interpret the things that I say. If I don't
know,
intend
it's really the tough thing is when you use facts to talk to people, and then they say, you sound condescending. What are you dealing with there?
Somebody that doesn't want to listen to you at all, so will come up with an excuse to try to discount everything you said.
I'm not going to propose to know what it is that they want. However, if you're claiming that somebody sounds condescending, you should consider that you're just don't have anything to say in rebuttal to what it is that they've said.
It's also possible that someone could be condescending, right? Like they could be saying, well, I'm better than you because I've discovered the ideas of freedom. I'm an enlightened person, and you are just you're just below me. I mean, there certainly could be people who really do come from that perspective. I don't believe in that sort of thing, but I can understand why people feel threatened by these ideas and why they would lash out like this. It's somebody that they purportedly care about. He did say it was family. Of course, family members are going to be some of the more difficult people to convince of anything because they know you and they know how wrong you've been in the past. Your family members know how fallible you are.
They saw you fall off the bike, right?
All that stuff. And so they're going to be more difficult. Friends, you can get into heated conversations with friends a little bit easier and still be friends afterwards. But eventually, if you've continued having these conversations about freedom and you're not getting anywhere, there's no headway being made, and that's, as Liberty Phoenix said, all he ever talks to anybody about anymore, that could also be grinding on people. Like,
yes.
I understand, like, for instance, Cody O'Connor recently on Off the Air Live, his show has been saying that he's frustrated by the fact, the claim that, oh, well, you can't talk about politics and religion at the dinner table, and those are the two most important things to talk about. And I agree with that. I think that you shouldn't feel as though something's off limits. You shouldn't feel as though you can't talk about these things, but it could really burn on somebody after a while. If that's all you talk about, you shouldn't be surprised if they don't want to hang out with you anymore. But again, the best way to solve that problem is to actually find liberty-minded people that you can connect with and have relationships with. So not everyone in your life seems at least that way. It wouldn't feel like everyone in your life is against you all the time.
Right.
I could see that it could be pretty overwhelming to have to deal with.
And maybe try to find some common ground of hey, talk about something that they enjoy talking about.
Well, sure, if they're your friend and that's something you want to spend time on. I mean, obviously, you only have so much time, right? And if the coworkers want to talk about the football team and you don't care, then don't pretend like you do.
Right.
So toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. Of course, the Free State Project, I don't think we actually mentioned it explicitly. This is a good idea for those of you who love freedom. The Free State Project is not a cult. It is not the idea of leaving your family and completely shutting them off. But in some cases, some people have had to physically leave the area in which their family lives to move to New Hampshire. But the idea of the Free State Project is to get liberty-minded people together all in the same geographic area so we can actually have an effect and have more freedom in our lifetime. And the fact is that when you have enough people together in one area who have similar ideas, it can be easier to influence other people. So I'll give you an example real quick. When I've done outreach booths at like county fairs, there are times when it's busier and times when it's not so busy. And usually it gets busier when it's somewhat busy. So when there's somebody standing at the table doing whatever it is I'm doing, whatever outreach thing, they're talking to me, then that's more likely to attract another person over to talk to me. If, Daryl, you're working with me and we're both working the table together and you've got somebody talking to you and I've got somebody talking to me, again, the more people at the table, the more likely it's going to bring other people over. So the fact is, as we make these ideas more popular, then they'll be more likely that people are interested in them.
Yes.
They'll seem less crazy. If you're the only person, think about it this way. If you're the only person in Illinois, in these people's lives, or wherever you happen to be, dear listener, if you're the only person talking about the ideas of freedom to your friends and family, then yeah, you're going to look like a nutter. You're going to look like some crazy loon on the soapbox on the side of the street because you're the only person they've ever heard this from. You're the first libertarian they've probably ever met. And you may not be you may not have been the best communicator of these ideas the first few times you talked to them. And we're all constantly improving.
People want, most people don't want to sit around and solve the world's problems. What you often
their
find,
own problems.
Yeah, what you often find with liberty sorts are people that they're problem solvers. Their mind has gotten to work, began, chewing away at this idea of how could humans get along better? How can we solve these problems, these conflicts that are constantly going on over and over again? And many people don't want, that's not in their personality type. It's not in their nature to sort of solve that problem. And so, they're not going to be as committed to it. Many people, they were raised in an environment where it's, get yours and forget about the rest of them. And that we have a system that works very well for people who are like that.
So you can share your thoughts, your techniques, please. I mean, certainly, even though we're on the radio here, that doesn't mean that we're the best.
Doesn't give us a monopoly on anything.
Right. That doesn't mean we're the best communicators. In fact, I highly recommend the Advocates for Self-Government in this area. There are always things that everyone can do to improve their communication techniques, and there's some great tools they have at the Advocates for Self-Government. Their website is theadvocates.org. For instance, The Secrets of Libertarian Persuasion is an excellent book by Michael Cloud where he goes through a number of very specific techniques for persuading people.
I would say that the Short Answers to Tough Questions by Mary Ruwart is a very good book.
Yeah, that's another good one. Let's go to Steve, and I believe they sell that at the Advocates for Self-Government.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.